Welcome everyone to this webinar. It has, like Elena mentioned, it was called Breaking into the Security with Azure Security Center. But recently, 2 weeks ago, at Microsoft Ignite, Microsoft rebranded its security portfolio products, which have had different names like Advanced Threat Protection and Azure Security Center, etc., into the Microsoft Defender family. So now Azure Security Center carries the name Microsoft Defender for Cloud, and accordingly, Azure Defender actually calls it. It has the name the Microsoft Defender for Cloud Plans for Protection. So this webinar will focus on Azure Security Center or Microsoft Defender for Cloud. But as we are still used to call it Azure Security Center, it might slip my mouth sometimes to actually call it, only refer to it Azure Security Center. But we should know that today it's Microsoft Defender for Cloud. And speaking about security in Azure and wider, just a few intro slides and words about the security and where it fits general picture and place. There is a kill chain or protect chain, as you can call it as well, where we have the identification phase and protection phase of the threats, and in fact we have the detection phase, response, and recovery. So Azure Security Center, actually Microsoft Defender for Cloud, fits the identification, protection, and part of the detection phase as well, where professionals, IT security professional, compliance professional work with it, and the other part, which is tightly integrated. And as you can see, both products, Microsoft Sentinel, previously Azure Sentinel, intertwines and overlaps in some features. But we will focus on Microsoft Defender for Cloud in here. So both products, in fact, cover different aspects of security. One is for infrastructure protection and the hack protection. The other one is for Microsoft Sentinel for threat hunting. But both products, in fact, get their insights and provide actionable insights from a lot of alerts they gather throughout the entire digital estate or infrastructure or tenant, which could be then any identity or endpoints or third-party cloud or on-premises or networks, and then provide the insightful view into the security posture. But very quickly, Microsoft Defender for Cloud actually provides the threat intelligence, where it in fact looks for known malicious actors using Microsoft Global Threat Intelligence. As well, we can have the behavioral analytics, which is in fact the part of the Microsoft Sentinel, which actually goes streams the actually gets the data from the log Analytics Workspace. And we will actually mention a few cloud architecture. So Microsoft Defender for Cloud architecture is very simple and but yet effective. We have Azure workloads, and Microsoft Defender for Cloud not just is capable of protecting Azure workloads, but it's also capable of protecting Windows, Linux, and other workloads that sit on premises as well as in other clouds. And there are Microsoft Defender for Cloud is actually capable of, in fact, getting various data through different agents or different executables that we can then install on these servers or on devices that can in turn send the data into the Azure Security Center, actually Microsoft Defender for Cloud, where we can then do something with the data. We can see, we can enrich data, we could geotag data. We have the possibility to export the data to Power BI. We can see any regulatory compliance. We can see the security posture of our infrastructure. We can then, in fact, stream that data elsewhere. We can stream that data to the storage. We can stream that data to Log Analytics Workspaces, to the event hubs, and in fact, do something with it. And in fact, we can get recommendations based on the status of our infrastructure, our services, and get, in fact, the view into the security, the whole security posture of our infrastructure. In fact, we also have security alerts. We have the inventory, and we have also the regulatory compliance that we mentioned previously, but also we have advanced protection status. And we have also the possibility to query our Azure Security Center, actually Microsoft Defender for Cloud, with a variety of ways, for example, with REST APIs, and we can automate something, as well as see the trends and provide some action. But in fact, very quick overview, and in a nutshell, what is the Microsoft Defender for Cloud? It's for also continuously assessing the security state of infrastructure and optimizing it, and actually provide and manage organizational security policy and compliance. So without further ado, actually, and I would like to, in fact, switch to our Azure Security Center, actually, or in fact, as we call it now, Microsoft Defender for Cloud, and in fact, look what it has in the sleeve. So we'll focus on, in fact, to see the product itself without any additional slides, which is a very better way to get acquainted with the product. So now we have also our menus a little bit rebranded and redesigned. We have 3 sections, which is the general section, where we actually have the informational, we have the information about the recommendations, about security alerts, and as well as inventory. As well, we can automate things and have dashboards. Then we have advanced security, which is the workload protections and regulatory compliance, as well as the secure score. And then we have the management of Azure Security Center, actually Microsoft Defender for Cloud, where we can automate things and connect other clouds, for example, Amazon AWS accounts, Amazon Web Services, or Google Cloud platform projects, and etc. First of all, when you open the Microsoft Defender for Cloud, you see the dashboard. The dashboard recently also changed, and for the better. We have the dashboard that will give us the, in fact, insight in our secure score, as well as the regulatory compliance status. And if we scroll a little bit down, then you have workload protections, which is the new name for a Azure Defender. And then you have also the firewall manager, and where you can see the status of our firewall secure hubs. And since I don't have any firewall yet, I don't have any dashboard items here. And we have also the dashboard about the inventory, about the status, and also the newest one addition is the information protection, which is also very nice because it is integrated with Azure Purview. And Purview is a new service, well, rather new service in Azure that provides a single pane of glass for information protection and governance for across all the digital estate of the company, but not just the Azure. It doesn't just encompass Azure, but it is used to provide the information protection and governance information across third-party clouds as well. For example, it supports integration of Amazon AWS S3 buckets and Cosmos databases, SQL databases, and on-premises storage, etc., etc. So this is also available once we set up Azure Purview. We will also get the status of information protection in here as well. But first of all, before getting anywhere, how do you start with, in fact, Microsoft Defender for Cloud? First of all, there's the overview page from where you can go to the subscriptions, in fact, and first of all, set up the visibility of your subscriptions. After that, you can go to the environment settings and apply and actually turn on the Microsoft Defender for Cloud plans if you want on specific Azure subscriptions, or you can turn it on individually also on Log Analytics Workspaces. So what we see here are Azure management groups under which these subscriptions are gathered, as well under which Log Analytics Workspaces are gathered. So Log Analytics Workspaces support 2 plans, while currently my Azure subscriptions support 11 plans, and we can turn on these individually. So let's just take a look at the Log Analytics Workspace first, and then we will take a look at the subscription. So once you can see which plans and how many plans actually you've turned on, how many plans are active. Microsoft Defender for Cloud plans are plans that are paid ones, and once we click on the Log Analytics Workspace, we will see that Enhanced Security is off. Enhanced Security means we still get continuous assessment and security recommendations in the Microsoft Cloud Defender for Cloud or Azure Security Center dashboard, and we always will get secure score. What we don't have any advanced things, for example, like threat protection on Azure VMs and non-Azure servers, and threat protection for SQL servers. So why is this convenient? It is convenient when we turn on or enable Microsoft Defender for Cloud plans. We can turn on and off these individually. These will still apply to all servers and all SQL servers on machines, but only the ones that in fact report their status to the Log Analytics Workspaces. So if they report their status to the Log Analytics Workspaces, you will be billed for it. Otherwise, you won't. But in fact, let's take a look at the plans on the subscription level. Here we have a little bit more settings, where in fact, and also a lot more plans. So while Enhanced Security is off, you will still, as previously, get continuous assessments and recommendations and secure score as well, which is in fact very good. So this is the secure score, and recommendations will still be available for you. And with the when you enable Microsoft Defender for Cloud plans, then you get all other things that are included in plans, and these are advanced things and very nice ones. For example, like just-in-time access or adaptive application control, network hardening, as well as very insightful regulatory compliance dashboards, reports, and threat protection for not just Azure and non-Azure servers, but also for PaaS platform as a service services. There we have a lot of plans that we can turn on individually. Just be aware that when you turn on a plan individually, and actually, for example, like in this case, servers or app services, this plan will apply to all servers and app services and other instances in your subscription that are onboarded. So just make sure that actually you enabled plans that you actually want. So plus there's also the possibility, once we enable this, to auto provision agents. So our workloads are automatically onboarded with Log Analytics agent for Azure VMs. We can select which workspaces and edit the configuration, so we can define how this agent deploys and to which Log Analytics workspaces connects. Plus, we also can choose to what additional data will be streamed in. For example, I've chosen all events and all Windows security and app locker events, but sometimes you would want to let's say set up a common or minimal set of events that are in fact the ones that are most important. Why you would do that? For example, if you have a lot of servers, and then if your Log Analytics workspace ingest a lot of data, then you would then let's say limit, for example, amount of data that is ingested, therefore decreasing a little bit the cost on the Log Analytics workspace. If you have a lot of data that you stream into it and a lot of resources, this can get very quickly quite heavy, or you can have very quickly a lot of data streaming into the Log Analytics, and then of course pay a lot more for it. So you should be very specific in what you want to be stored and stream into the Log Analytics. But also, on the other hand, you don't want to miss any important data to be streamed into that. So it is also very important to know that. And as well, we can some of the things are here in preview that we can in fact turn on and set up. For example, we can automatically onboard Log Analytics agents for Azure Arc machines, and Arc is the service through which we can connect on-premises machines and third-party machines, other cloud machines that are not Azure hosted in Azure, that are not Azure native. And once we do that, we also have to pick up the required Log Analytics workspace, as well as if we want to stream the vulnerability assessment for machines. We have two choices: either to use the Microsoft one or bring the third party, which is provided by Qualys, and I will conveniently select this one. And then, as well as if we also have Azure and Arc connected machines, these can be also connected through these and in fact checked for additional configuration settings and validated. Plus, and of course, don't forget to click save, which is sometimes I forget and then I have to do it all over again, but conveniently it's placed here. Also, we once we set up everything in here, we would want also to enable integrations with Defender for Cloud Apps, which is in fact the new name for Cloud App Security, and also the Defender for Endpoints as well. If you have Azure DevOps, or if you have any continuous integration and continuous delivery solution, then we can configure the CI/CD integration here as well. Workflow automation can be done outside of this dialog box or blade, but if we do it in here, it will apply, for example, to all of them. So it's the same thing as we do it elsewhere, and we'll see that as well. Continuous experts, in fact, here applies to this Azure subscription, which we can in fact stream to Event Hub or to the Log Analytics workspace. And I think it is pretty unresponsive. Oh yes, let's wait a little bit. While we are waiting, so let's take a look at it. So we can choose to which data we will export: secure score, alerts, regulatory compliance, and we can be also picky of what we will stream into it, and as well as the streaming updates and frequency. Plus, if we have an event hub, oh, there it is. I've clicked on the log analytics workspace. This page were stuck for a while, but now it's alive. So typically, you would also stream the information that Azure Security Center gathers in store this, for example, in all this information, for example, all the recommendations or secure score. You can pick whatever you want in here, medium, low, high, informational, for example, as well as pick the resource group to where you will export the configuration, as well as the target workspace. So I don't have any workspaces in this in this subscription, but anyway, let's go back. Once you define all of these, then you are able to go in fact to the recommendations or security alerts. You can also, other than going to security environment settings, you could go also to getting started, where you will see all the workspaces, for example, or subscriptions that you haven't enabled the Defender for Cloud and install agents automatically. But here, all the subscriptions have automatic agent installation enabled, so there's no option to do that. In fact, once you enable it, let's take a look at the secure score and recommendations, which are in fact free for everyone, and even if you haven't enabled Defender for Cloud plans, in fact. And here you can see the overall secure score and subscriptions with a lower score, as well as drill into the different management groups and subscriptions. And when you click in here, you can see actually the secure score level, as well points, and you can see the recommendations. Why secure score is important? It's important because it gives you, it is calculated, it is the aggregate score of security posture of your inventory. And previously, this number was in hundreds, and we really couldn't tell the difference between, for example, score of the 650 and 680. But in fact, now that this has been normalized to lower level and displayed as a percentage, we can now be aware of how our security posture trend is going. So whether we are better than yesterday or worse, and we can get an insight if something something has changed in here. So once you review your environment and your subscriptions, you can go to the recommendations panel, where you can see, in fact, recommendations, secure score recommendations, and all recommendations. This one is, in fact, sorted and grouped by different controls. The controls here give you the immediate information about the stance of the control. As you can, you notice that a lot of dashboards, especially security ones and compliance ones in Microsoft, have color coding, very nice and convenient color coding, and the red simply means, even if you haven't worked with any of these controls or Microsoft Defender for Cloud, even if it's your first look, you can tell that red is something wrong, and then green is okay. There's also orange, which is a warning, and gray, which is in fact not applicable, or blue, which is the informational. So we can see the maximum score, and in fact the potential score increase, and the number of unhealthy resources. So sorted by all of these and filtered by all of these possibilities. And we can drill into the control, which is the enable MFA. And this includes not just Azure sources, as you can see, but also AWS and Amazon Web Services and Google Cloud Platform and other as well. We can see in fact which resources are healthy or unhealthy, and as well as the potential score increase. So what we can do, we can, if we want, also sort this by potential score increase, and then see, in fact, the potential score increase usually also means that we will actually address something that is, in fact, affecting more our security than the other things. So resolving potentially the vulnerabilities that have higher score will get our infrastructure security posture more secure. It meaning the higher the score, the more important assessment it is. For example, vulnerability assessment solution should be enabled on virtual machines, and we can see that this is quite unhealthy. So we can see that there are some icons beyond this, and this can be a quick fix, for example. This can be also enforcement, and this can be also, in fact, this could be also an exemption, for example. If we want to fix, for example, these the recommendation, we'll click into it and then see the details. Each recommendation actually has its freshness interval, which is the interval through which the status of these resources is being updated. Some resources are refreshed. The status of some resources are recommendations are refreshed more in more time. For example, this one is refreshed every 24 hours, while the others could be refreshed much sooner. For example, every 4, 6, or 2, or half an hour, 30 minutes, for example. But what we have a description, in fact, as well as the related recommendations. So if we have many of these recommendations, if we have more than one that is related and dependent on that recommendation, plus we have manual recommendation steps, which is also important. We have the quick fix, which is just clicking here and clicking on a fix. But it's important also to know that that we are able to do that manually, in fact, which is also important because we have to know what it is, in fact, and how to do it. Of course, we have healthy resources and unhealthy, but if we want to, for example, do that on a lot more resources than just one, if we have more resources, it's more convenient to actually select which one we want, and then, in fact, click on a fix, which will in turn fix all these together. In fact, we can choose the vulnerability assessment solution, which is the one provided by Microsoft Defender, which is included with Microsoft Defender for servers, or Qualys, but I'll choose and stick with the Microsoft one. Once we click on fix, then we accept, of course, the terms, and fix for resources will move soon these resources into the healthy state, and we'll see the recommendation not immediately, sometimes, yes, in a couple of minutes, but usually it says it may take up to 24 hours, but it doesn't have to take if you are due to the refreshment. Usually the freshness intervals are in the 24-hour window are refreshed somewhere at 1 o'clock, 13 hours, 1300 hours. So somewhere around that time, and we can actually see the in fact at that time the recommendations refreshed. What we actually can do as well, if we don't want to, for example, to have our recommendation show for certain resources, what we can do, we can exempt a certain resource from displaying into the recommendations page. We can exempt it. For example, if we are testing something and we don't want to show it here, we can do the exemption. And while we do the exemption, it is also important that we name the exemption accordingly, and I suggest that you can also do set the expiration date. There are two exemption categories, so you accept the risk with the exempting the solution, or actually the other one would be because you actually mitigated or resolved that recommendation through a third-party service. So if it's the testing that you're doing, that you would have to do that as well. But this is how we quickly fix the recommendations. And in fact, as you go along, you will see also that these recommendations change. Once the agents are installed, for example, we can in fact go to the inventory and see actually which the status of our inventory. From that inventory, we can in fact add a non-Azure servers. We can in fact query these services, and in fact download the whole report of the services. So while we see the recommendations here gathered up around the controls, the inventory in fact allows us to select a resource, for example, that server, which is partially okay and partially not, and then see which recommendations the server has, and what is the resource health of that resource. For example, in this case, the server, which is the server connected through the Azure Arc, and which is the on-premises server, for example. And we can see all the recommendations that apply directly or indirectly to that virtual machine, to that resource, in this case, virtual machine. And then we can, in fact, address this. We can see that well, the status, whether it's healthy or not, and then any potential alerts that are applicable to the server as well as any applications that are installed. So for example, we can also see that it's powered by Microsoft Threat and Vulnerability Management, and we can see that there's also the monitoring agent and Windows Defender installed at that service, and we can see also the number of vulnerabilities that are found. But these recommendations are here applicable to the resource, which are also very nice, because we can in fact see all the recommendations for the resource in one place, and we can start mitigate the ones that are in fact the most important ones. And once the agents are installed, and once a certain time has passed, and after we added non-Azure service, for example, we can onboard these on non-Azure service through Azure Arc, for example, and install them and install agents on them, let's say. We can see the security alerts that have been generated. As you can see, there's also a sample alert. These are alerts that has sample alert tags attached to them. So if you are just starting with Azure Security Center, actually Microsoft Defender Pro Cloud, you can generate sample alerts if you don't want to wait, or in fact if you want to see different alert types, and generate sample alerts and pick the subscription and also the Defender for Cloud plans for which these sample alerts will be created. But otherwise, if you just, for example, leave your virtual machine ports open, and let's say if you set up a virtual machine in Azure and leave the port RDP 3389 open, very soon you will start seeing these alerts populating in here. As if I scroll a little bit down, so for example, there it is, suspicious authentication activity. So for example, this is the real alert that was made onto the this server, or for example onto this one, which is Arc Server 3, and we can in fact see the full details, what happened and what was it. So we can see the severity, we can see the status, and we can in fact change the status, for example, to dismissed if we mitigated that alert. We can see the time when it happened and to which MITRE ATT&CK tactics it applies. MITRE ATT&CK tactics is the framework. MITRE ATT&CK, there it is. MITRE ATT&CK is a framework. It's a knowledge base of tactics and techniques based on real-world observations, and each tactics and techniques fall under one of these collections, categories: reconnaissance, resource development, initial access, and so on. So our Azure Security Center, actually Microsoft Defender for Cloud, actually uses these tactics. For example, this falls onto the pre-attack to categorize. So these tactics are MITRE ATT&CK tactics that are being updated, and we can see in fact into which attack chain this alert falls into. We can then see all the details about it. Number of failed authentication attempts have been 14. We can of course look at all of these into the, and we can see all of these into Log Analytics Workspace, for example. But what's most important, as the information was the RDP session initiated, no, which is kind of a relief. But we can see the names that this attack was using, the attacker was using to try to log in through the RDP port. And this is something that is done by bots and not by, of course, humans, because it would be very hard for humans to scan and all the computers over the internet. But once we have our ports exposed, we are in fact available for port scanning as well. So this is the tactic where attackers actually want to find out whether a certain account actually exists, not to break into the account in fact, but just check whether the account exists. So if the account exists, you will get the information that the password is not okay. But if there is no such account, you will get the information that there is no such account. So you can move forward with a different account name. Once you identify the existence of the account, for example, administrator, that's why we in fact are not supposed to name any accounts administrator or any accounts with dictionary names. And in this case, these will be then, if it indeed was there some account named like this, it will be then tested again, for example, used in a spray attack techniques and so, or some others, of course. After that, we can in fact take action and mitigate the threat. We can trigger an automated response, in fact, which uses the logic apps. And in fact, if we have any logic app defined, we can in fact use, for example, some a logic app to trigger automated response. And automated response could be anything from sending an email to, let's say, closing the ports and other things as well. Plus, what else? The workload protections actually give us the most of the things here, important things that Microsoft Defender for Cloud Plans have, like advanced protection, protection for cloud workloads, servers, Kubernetes, app services, key vaults, etc. But also the advanced protection, for example, just-in-time access or vulnerability assessment. I've just remediated that recommendation, so we have still 7 unprotected. It still needs to refresh to see the lower number, and some other things like adaptive application controls or network hardening and file integrity monitoring. But very important part is the just-in-time VM access, which in fact is a time-bound network security group automated rule creation, which in fact which bounds to a certain time frame where the certain ports are going to be open. What we have to do, we have to define, for example, on a certain server, which ports are going to be controlled through the just-in-time VM access configuration. So we add a port configuration through it. Just-in-time VM access will be applicable. For example, RDP or FTP or RDP port and so on, and define for each port which allowed sources, IP addresses will be available or not, and then the maximum request time through which this ports will be open. So instead of having all the time open all the time ports in Azure, what we will do, we will actually enable just-in-time, and in fact time-bound the RDP ports through which these will be open. For example, if we go to the virtual machines, for example, and if we take a look at the one server that doesn't have that enabled, we can see as we go to the connect that that there is no just-in-time enabled. So if we click on download RDP file and if we connect, then we will be able to connect. But in fact, if we enable just-in-time access, for example, let's see the one that actually has just-in-time access enabled, like this one, we will have to request access, in fact, and then our access will be enabled. So this network security groups here that are tied to this virtual machines, in fact, have these rules automatically installed. So right in here, instead of having the port 3389 always open, once we click on enable on just-in-time in Azure Security Center, then these ports will be actually changed, and the order of the ports will change. In fact, the new rule will be added, and our in fact request will be allowed, and we will see the change that happened, which is in fact right here. So now we see that there's a new rule. In here. Yeah, well, actually we can see that new rule number 100, which actually allows the port 3389 to be open and accessible to that destination. And in fact, this will be only available for for a certain time that we defined actually in our solution. Plus, we have regulatory compliance, in fact, which is also important. But first of all, let's take a look at the security alerts. If we take a look at the alerts, we will actually go to the security alerts in here, and we will be able to, in fact, see the other alerts and, in fact, filter out them and so on. And after that, regulatory compliance is also something that is included in Microsoft Defender, that is part of Microsoft Defender for Cloud plans, where we actually have some regulatory compliance benchmarks out of the box, and the others are easily added. There are newer regulatory compliance controls available as well, and others are being added continuously. We have the by default Azure Security Benchmark applied, but we can in fact use and see the others. And in fact, these, if we want to be compliant and if we want to adhere to the some regulatory compliance, we can in fact see what is not compliant and what we need to remediate in order to become compliant in a certain aspect. Green is compliant, red is not compliant, and the gray one is in fact not applicable to us, and we can see which controls and which parts of the standards we need to address, in fact, to become compliant in certain regulatory compliance control. And in fact, we can add a different additional compliance policies in our environment settings, for example, at the tenant root group, let's say, or the individual subscriptions, for example, where we can see the ones that are here available out of the box, and the other ones are manually added. We can add more standards if we wish, for example, and these are being added continuously. And after we've done that, we can also assess, perform the assessment based on this standard. For example, recently this one has been deprecated and there's a new one, in fact, and these standards are in fact enforced through the Azure policies. And for example, this regulatory compliance and standard has these policies definitions, which are in fact gathered into the initiative definition. And you can see that these policies are applied differently: modify, deploy if not exist, or audit not exist. So all these Azure policies will apply to our in fact our environment if we have added it. So we will be able to see the outcome in the regulatory compliance dashboard, in fact. And of course, we can then download report for in fact the standards that we've added in a PDF or CSV format, and as well as change these as well. If we want, for example, to add other solutions in here, we would be able to do that recently through this. For now, in the new environment, there's only Amazon Web Services, which is still in preview in here, but there's the classic Cloud Connector experience, which will allow us to, in fact, add other cloud providers like Google Cloud Platform or AWS, for example, where we can, in fact, proceed with adding a connector. So we have 3 steps. We have the AWS authentication, where we can, in fact, we have to add AWS role or number, and of course proceed with the Azure Arc configuration, and then of course it will be added. But first of all, what we need to do is also complete our deployment part into the AWS, and which is in fact adding specific roles for our subscription to be able to pull the information from AWS, and after a while, minutes after we've connected our solution, we will in fact see the dashboard that is available, and recommendations from AWS accounts or GCP projects available in there. And what else? We have workbooks available here as well. We can in fact see the dashboards and the information that these workbooks are providing. For example, secure score over time. Let's say we can pick some of these and a specific time range, and we can see actually how our secure score went over time, and actually we could in fact mitigate or assess and actually find out what happened in a certain period of time, which resources are most unhealthy, and recommendations, security controls over time, etc., as well as the new ones. There are a lot of workbooks available. We can in fact add new ones. There are public templates available as well, and other things. What is also important is that we can automate add workflow automation through three things. We can define trigger conditions for security alerts, for recommendations, and for regulatory compliance standards. So we can use logic apps and define the severity, as well as define the logic app that will perform some action, for example, block a user, or perform any regulatory compliance response that we've made in logic app, and therefore we can respond to that. So when it happens, we can in fact respond proactively to any alert. For example, let's say if we got an alert that is let's say like the one that I've showed, for example, suspicious authentication activity. If we have any ports open, then we can, for example, let's say close the ports, or an email an administrator, let's say, and other things that could be automated, for example. There was a really fast and overview of Microsoft Defender for Cloud, which also provides a lot more than what we've seen. Different automation, workbook integration with other products like Purview, Firewall Manager. The Workload Protection also gave us the possibility to monitor files for integrity. For example, the registry and the usual places where the actual files, usual files reside, we can monitor for that, as well as perform some adaptive network hardening, opening and closing ports automatically, and so on. But that is of course too much for 1 hour, but that is the something we should do afterwards, and in much more relaxed setting. Well, this was a very quick introduction and overview of the Microsoft Defender for Cloud, and hopefully it was helpful and informational. And and hopefully you will start using it, if nothing else, in a free tier mode, and raise up and increase your security posture of your infrastructure and workload. So